Hello everybody and welcome back to the Summer Championship. I'm TJ, joined by the Admiral. That's Admiral. We're about to jump into what I think is a great match. Purple versus JasonZhou. Two competitors who are veterans. Both players looking for a second appearance at a World Championship. Both players in the past have been champions of their respective regions. This is a big one.
Let's do this! Purple versus JasonZhou!
JasonZhou coming back, and I'm terrified of it. I didn't want to get him in my group because his lineup's gonna crush me.
Purple is a great player. I have known him for like more than 3 years.
Hilarious guy, and really good at Hearthstone.
We have been like played several times in the past. He plays really well, and he has very unique understanding of Hearthstone.
He's got the Warlock. He's really good at Handlock. He's really good control player, and he'll probably beat me in Shot Mirrors.
This time I feel like I have a slight advantage in my lineup, so I hope this time I can beat him.
Purple versus JasonZhou! Ready, set, go!
Both these players, very big personalities, I would say, is one thing that stands out about them. Neither of them really have a filter when they're talking, whether it's on stage, whether it's off stage. They just kind of say what they feel, and I kind of respect that about them both.
Yeah, they both have much larger than life personalities, and that's something I've always found endearing about Purple. And the first time I met JasonZhou, it was the same way. He was very outspoken. He was very willing to speak his mind. And just have a great time. Just say what was on his mind. I remember when we walked in the interview in Shanghai, and he walks in the room, and typically it was all of us sat on the couch or in chairs, and they would sit across from us as we'd interview them. Jason just walks right in, puts his arm around TJ, and sat there the entire time. It was like 40 minutes of interview. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and we'd only met once before at the World Championship in 2016 when I interviewed him on stage a few times. So that was the only interaction we had. He's just a friendly guy who loves playing Hearthstone. But it's time to get down to business for both of these players. A win here means a spot in the quarterfinals, and a spot in the quarterfinals means one match away from a second World Championship berth for both of these players. Purple competed in 2015, and JasonZhou competed last year in 2016. Made it all the way to the top 4, and the lineups have some differences. Both these players have banned Druid away from each other, but they both have Evolved Shaman, Highlander Priest, and the difference comes with Control Warlock for JasonZhou and Temple Rogue for Purple.
Yeah, Purple I know practiced a lot for this event in particular, and when Purple practices for an event, he is one of the scariest opponents in the world. He kind of shifts in and out of the tournament scene where he'll play very dedicated for a period of time, and then he kind of disappears back into the woods, only to be seen when he knows that it's his time to come out and wield his powers. I don't know. He's like a wise old sage. But JasonZhou has been one of the most consistent performers in the world for about the last year now.
In one of the most competitive regions, we talk a lot about how China doesn't have any representatives at the World Championship, how they've struggled this year, but they're catching up to the rest of the world. And the players that we see at championships from China are the same, and they're making it through really tough competition. In order to gain points in China, you have to play on the most competitive ladder. You have to play in some of the most competitive opens, some with upwards of 4,000 players. And then you have to play in a stacked field of players that won similar events. And, we see the same players time and time again, like Jason, Omega Zero, Trunks, and that is no easy feat.
It's really not. It's certainly something incredible. It doesn't matter who you are. It is difficult to make it through a field of that size.
I wonder.
This match, though, this is always a tough one for me. So many times I see Shaman pull out to these big leads in the early stages, and so many times I see the Priest player just able to consistently keep the board under control and really mitigate everything till they get to their end game. In this particular matchup, I think JasonZhou has one of the better openers with Primal Fin Totem, and then he's got option for Flame Tongue and Jade Claw here. Purple, I've talked to him a lot about this deck, and he loves to mulligan strictly for card draw effects a lot of times. And he says certain matchups will depend on what you keep. Shadowward Horror, of course, a big card you're looking for in this matchup. But even just this effect right here, I think, is fairly good news for Purple. It means having that Loot Hoarder JasonZhou can't push damage And that's a lot of where his win rate is found, is simply pushing a lot of early damage and then having an explosive turn with Bloodlust before Purple is able to sweep the board.
Yeah, and a lot of it's about the reload too, with how much removal Priest actually packs. A lot of it's you know that at least one of your board positions is going to get removed, especially early on. So a lot of times players will say in Priest, they throw away a lot of cards unless those cards read Doppelgangster or Evolve because of how important they are. There's really only two things that clear a board of that size, and that's Dragonfire Potion or Shadow Reaper Anduin if those get up to the 5 attack mark. But if you play it on 6, then it eliminates a lot of options from the Priest repertoire.
Yeah, and a lot of Purple's play, when you look at it from just a top-down perspective, it looks very straightforward. He tends to play the highest mana cards he can. He tends to take the combat very straightforward looking. And it's Orange in one of his pieces, he said it was ABC Hearthstone, and he was referring to Pavel playing some of the best ABC Hearthstone in the world. That's something that Purple is very adept at, but he has a certain understanding of the overall plan of the matchup as well.
Yeah, but that's not how Purple has always been. You know, think back to 2015. He was a pretty outside-of-the-box player. And that helped him a lot because the overall level of play was quite low and or lower than it was now. And so Purple would find these little holes in the metagame and these little holes in gameplay where he would be able to capitalize on other players' mistakes or other players' lack of understanding of how in-depth he actually thought about the game. A lot of times, some pro players, especially back in the day, would come out and say, you know what, I haven't learned something about Hearthstone until I talk to Purple.
And I got to hold you right there, TJ, because this turn for Purple is, this is the turn that he is not wanting to see. Full board going into JasonZhou's turn 5, very little potential to have a read on the hand. This is where JasonZhou is looking to win games with this Bloodlust here. Even though it's not going to outright kill Purple, I don't believe, if I've calculated it right, it doesn't put him in a terrible spot.
Wait.
It's 18 plus 4.
No, that is 18 plus 6. That's enough damage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he does get back. I don't know. I just forgot one of the 0 power minions could attack. Yeah.
That's going to be it. JasonZhou takes a quick victory in game number 1. Purple not able to find the early removal that he needed. And those are the types of starts that Shaman can have. Yes, Priest packs a ton of removal, but if you get on the board and Priest isn't able to find the answer, Shaman can end the game very quickly, as we see there.
Yeah, that is the exact game plan he's looking to execute. And a lot of that flexibility came from the fact that JasonZhou had both Jade Claw and the Flame Tongue Totem and the Primal Fin Totem to generate. But if you think about it, those are the cards that he's typically mulliganing for in the matchup, so he'll be keeping them. He'll be throwing away basically everything else. That's not a difficult combination to piece together.
And you can see their lineups. Purple had mentioned that he thinks that he's got a slight disadvantage against JasonZhou's lineup because of the Warlock. And, you know, JasonZhou in Shanghai for the Spring Championship, he took a risk with the lineup that he brought. He brought a full control lineup and hoping to run into lineups that was good against. But the group that he got in was not the group that he had hoped for, and the risk did not pay off.
Yeah, and Spring was one of the most stacked fields I think that we've ever seen. And I think that risk from JasonZhou was justified. And he mentioned that here he felt much more comfortable about predicting the metagame, which I find quite interesting because we're seeing a wider range of decks in this tournament than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, now JasonZhou, a veteran on the scene, but let's get to know him just a little bit more.
Well met.
My name is JasonZhou. I'm 27 years old and I come from Shanghai, China. My favorite card is Gomash. My favorite deck is Control Warrior because I like the feeling of control things. My favorite thing of Hearthstone is make a friend. I can't say Hearthstone make everybody happy, but he makes me happy.
You know what, Jason? It makes me happy too.
You're a big Control Warrior advocate.
I used to be. Back in the day. You know, the Control Warrior that Jason's talking about, you know, Gromhell Scream, you know, the old stuff. You just Alex Shaw's and then you kill him. Doesn't happen as often anymore. It's gone in a little bit of a different direction, but maybe one day. But you can see, you know, just sort of his playstyle. Loves the control decks, and this deck from him is no different. Instead of bringing Temple Rogue, like a lot of the field decided to bring to sort of complement the lineup of Highlander Priest, Jade Druid, Evolve Shaman, he went with Control Warlock. He feels like it's better situated in the meta for dealing with the other end of those decks, as we had mentioned. So
Ooh, and Purple's opening is... This is not looking good in this matchup, and JasonZhou draws his Mountain Giant. There were a couple things I wanted to highlight about JasonZhou's deck and how I think it's a bit more dedicated towards the anti-aggro side, but he has 1 Mountain Giant, 2 copies of Twilight Drake, and a Lich King in here. Those are the big boys, and he's drawn 3 of them right away.
Yeah, he's basically drawn his 3 big earlier game threats, with Twilight Drake and Mountain Giant all being able to come down relatively early in the game to their size.
This is an interesting play, though. JasonZhou challenges the Blood Mage immediately with Earthenring Farseer, and this delays the Mountain Giant, makes the Twilight Drakes a little bit weaker. This is a curious play to me. It does keep Purple from playing Acolyte a lot of times, though.
Yeah, it keeps him playing Acolyte. It also starts to get damage in early on in the game, and that can really matter. We saw this matchup a lot if we go back to the playoffs, as both these decks were starting to emerge as 2 of the more powerful decks. The Priest, it was basically like a rush to Blood River Gul'dan. If you could get Blood River Gul'dan online early enough, you could outpressure the Priest and outlast their damage before they're able to pick up their big pieces. And what mattered a lot of times in those matchups was sticking threats early on and getting in damage early on, so you could close out the game before Priest was able to draw their whole deck and eventually muscle you out of the game before you get Blood River.
Wow, Purple takes no action here. And this is really interesting to me. I'm curious if this Earthenring Farseer is meant to throw Purple off a little bit. Maybe send him a message. I don't have these big threats in hand because I'm willing to, instead of tap on this turn, simply play Earthenring Farseer. I think a lot of times Purple will read that as there's no Mountain Giant in hand. Purple's a very strong hand reader, and JasonZhou knows that. So I'm curious if that's ever a factor for him playing that Earthenring Farseer there.
But this does sort of mess up his curve as we go along. Next turn, unless a 1 health minion is played, he floats a mana if he plays Twilight Drake. And he could have played Mountain Giant if he had gotten to that turn with a tap instead of the Earthenring Farseer on that turn 3. He did play a little bit more mana efficient, and who knows, maybe this Earthenring Farseer will get in enough damage to be able to get there. But it is an interesting decision and not something that we see often against a deck that struggles to deal with big stuff that come early in the game, especially since Priest has very minimal ways to deal with the Mountain Giant outside of basically only Shadow Word Death.
I'm looking at Jason right now. It looks to me like he's paying attention to Purple from this perspective. And that Doomsayer will delay the rest of Jason's turn here.
Well, he can't develop.
This is looking like a tap-go turn, and that is not the situation you want to be in when you're the aggressor with what is typically a control deck.
Oh, picks up Shadow Bolt.
Big draw
And Purple,
for Jason. And
Purple rolled his eyes.
There's only 1 copy of Shadow Bolt in JasonZhou's deck. That was the only card he could draw that turn that stopped that Doomsayer from going off.
There's a lot of 1-ups in this deck. There's a single copy of Doomsayer, Drain Soul, Tainted Zealot, Shadow Bolt, Hellfire, Spellbreaker.
Drain Soul was the other one, because with the Mortal Coil.
With the Mortal Coil, Drain Soul would have done it. So we had 2 outs in that situation to be able to find it. And now he develops a Mountain Giant, and a Shadow Word Death is nowhere to be seen. It does have Shadow Visions, but this deck packs a lot of spells, so it is a pretty diluted pool if he wants to try and look for it.
And Dragonfire Potion doesn't touch that Twilight Drake either.
And here's some of the key cards for JasonZhou. Mountain Giant, of course, we've seen, but there's only 1 copy. And I think Lich King is the big one here. If that sticks, then there's some big things you can pull. If you get Death Grip, you can pull Raza right out of the deck with Lich King, which basically makes it so the Priest does not have a win condition anymore.
A lot of the Lich King cards are just very strong as Priest. Even Frostmourne, it's a very expensive card, but just represents 15 damage over 3 turns. And that's really what Jason's looking for, ways to apply consistent pressure to Purple so that he has to exhaust resources.
Once again, JasonZhou going with the pressure line. He's healing back up this Twilight Drake and continuing to piece together pretty sizable chunks of damage.
Now, this is an interesting turn for Purple because his hand is quite weak in this position. When I see something like this, I think 1 of 2 things. Number 1, Purple's got to start drawing cards. Or number 2, Purple's going to have to make a sacrifice somewhere with something like Prophet Velen to fight here. He instantly goes for the Radiant Elemental, which does, potentially soak up some damage here as well, but this is looking very grim if you're in purple spot.
Yeah, he basically needs Shadow Word Horror in order to get through these Twilight Drakes. He has the Pint-Sized Potion in hand, so Shadow Word Horror would be the draw. That could allow him to clear the board. But at this point, it's starting to get to where it might be a little bit too late because JasonZhou's already pieced together enough damage. If purple has to use a lot of resources to get rid of this board, that means he has less resources to couple with Shadow Reaper Anduin and Raza later in the game for damage. JasonZhou's also drawing cards, which means he's getting closer to Blood Reaver Gul'dan, which can put purple on an even faster clock.
Yeah, step number 1 is for purple to find a way to deal with this. And right now, that's looking like only Shadow Word Harbor. So if that's not this draw, which it's not, purple, I believe, is just about dead here. Again, Velen is going to be able to buy him some time, but losing that burst potential means that purple needs stabilization on board in order to deliver that kill with Shadow Reaper Anduin a lot of times. That alone is a problem for him because it means JasonZhou is going to continue to close in with that pressure turn after turn.
Is there some fancy stuff he can do with Wild Pyromancer? He can actually heal it back up with Binding Heal to get one more spell on it, so he could Wild Pyro Potion of Madness, trade in, heal it back up with Binding Heal.
I feel like purple can chew through a lot of this board over the course of a couple turns, but the fact that Twilight Drakes just go untouched is just such a big deal.
Yeah. Not picking up any more threats. I mean, he really has gone through a lot of the threats in his deck. He has Despicable Dreadlord and Lich King left. He also does have
Gul'dan.
And Blood Reaver Gul'dan. He has Abyssal Enforcer as well, but at this point, I don't think he...
Silence the Mistress to simply get threats on board to threaten purple. Spirit Lash gets drawn.
Well, he's got Velen to couple with that. And Wild Pyromancer, so there is a lot of stuff that he can do here.
I think purple saw this coming from a mile away. He's so good at these styles of turns, and I don't know what he saw instantly, but something here is going to clear a significant amount.
This is actually a full board clear, I think, because he can Binding Heal back up his Wild Pyromancer to get an extra spell effect, and trade in the Galaka Crawler, and then Spirit Lash everything back in order to deal the extra 2 damage that he needs. So there is a board clear available to him.
Wow. Oh, it won't clear the board. That activates, and now Spirit Lash.
Nearly.
So JasonZhou's left with a 4-1, but that 4-1 is fairly significant. I imagine JasonZhou's considering replacing that with an Abyssal Enforcer, though.
It's possible. There's a lot of resources used from purple.
Or that.
Despicable Dreadlord dodges just about everything.
Only a fool rejects the Lich King.
Purple remains under pressure.
Blessed be this funnel cake.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Oh boy's right. And Jason has 10 cards left in his
I
deck.
wonder what Jason reads this as from purple. Like, I imagine you got to think his hand is pretty slim pickings at this point.
Well, you know he's got a coin if you're keeping track of that. And then 3 cards,
Wow.
2 of which he's been holding on for quite a while.
If this Priest of the Feast pulls this much heat, I think that's a success in purple's book.
But I mean, this is a lethal setup next turn through a hero power heal unless he's able to remove something off the board, which currently he is not.
It's not Anduin.
He has to profit Velen to heal just to stay alive. And it would still be able to get through.
Not all wonder are lost.
Yeah, there's 15 damage. There's 12 on board for JasonZhou, plus the 3 from hand.
Wow.
With Abyssal Enforcer. And JasonZhou is going to move up to a 2-0 lead. Purple not able to get it done with the Priest.
JasonZhou drew so many of his threats early on. I think he paced his threats very well, and those Twilight Drakes just delivered damage after damage after damage. That was the execution you're looking for. A lot of times this matchup, when you're playing Warlock, you rely on Blood Reaver Gul'dan to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but in that game, it was just minion pressure from JasonZhou.
Yeah, and JasonZhou, he's looking good. We talked about the risk that he took in Shanghai that didn't pay off, but the lineup that he brought to this tournament seems to be working out. We're going to see what happens in game number 3 right after this.
Don't stray too far away from the fire, my friends. There's more tales to tell. This is the 2017 Hearthstone Summer Championship.
It's Hearthstone's biggest stage, where the world's 16 most worthy players will gather in search of the game's most glittering prize. It's the Hearthstone World Championship, and this year, it will all take place in Amsterdam. The captivating Dutch capital will become the epicenter of the Hearthstone universe in January, when it hosts the World Championship. Who shall etch their name into the game's eternal lore? We're heading to the Netherlands to find out. The 2017 season concludes with a masterpiece.
I did it.
The Hearthstone World Championship, January 18th through 21st in Amsterdam.
And a stacked lineup of players will join us already in Amsterdam for the World Championship, and including many European players who will be playing in their home region, which I think is a big deal, not only for the players, but also for you spectators out there who want to go and watch the action. It's going to be great.
It's a first stop in Europe for the Hearthstone Championship Tour, and what a place to have it. And what a time to have it too. Field is looking incredible for this year.
Yeah, and one of these players looking for a second spot at the World Championship. Both of these guys looking for a spot in the quarterfinals with a win in this match, and it looks like it's all JasonZhou up to this point. But I feel like Purple does have some game left in this series. I think all of his decks are very capable of taking wins over the priest deck from JasonZhou. He's got a priest deck that's pretty targeted at beating aggressive decks.
Yeah, but that being said, Purple has included a lot of tech cards to fight against control style decks. You can see 2 Cobalt Scalebanes in hand right away for Purple, and he draws Backstab to handle this Northshire Cleric, a very critical draw for him, and even picks up an additional 5/5 with that Cabal Songstealer. A lot of this matchup boils down to whether or not Purple can stick something to the board and get repetitive damage from it. That is a major factor for him in this matchup, and for JasonZhou, it's pretty much to try and contain that. But being a Highlander deck, it means there's 1 copy of all those cards to get that job done.
Yeah, for Purple, it's also about playing around some key cards at times. It's about making your board less vulnerable to Shadow Reaper Anduin.
A little showmanship from the players.
Yeah. You can tell Jason was kind of looking off into space thinking, and Purple was giving him an eye over there. Players aren't that far away from each other. They're playing pretty close. They're oriented towards each other as well. So a glance up, and they can see and maybe able to read their opponent.
Ooh, and there's that actually I think is one of the more important cards in this matchup in particular, just because it's another sizable body that threatens JasonZhou. It's hard for him to remove that immediately, and that means Cobalt Scalebane starts finding value. Of course, the Doomsayer this turn is going to put quite a bit of heat onto Purple and his ability to develop, but his hand's so heavy right now that I don't think he minds even trading the Shadow Step for just another Priest card.
Yeah, a lot of times Shadow Step has kind of minimal uses against this matchup. In tempo-oriented matchups, you want to use it to like bounce back your Vile Spine Slayer to get another kill on a minion. Sometimes you want to use it to, you know, do burst with Leroy or bounce back Prince Kaliseth, but he doesn't have Prince Kaliseth in his opening hand. And so he wants to be able to get as much resources as possible, and he does that by keeping this Washburn.
Ooh.
Shadow Form's pretty interesting.
That I think is potentially a very significant draw later down the road too. The fact that JasonZhou's hero power, if this goes to parity, outpaces Purple's hero power. Think back to the matchup we saw with Baiza versus Pavel. At a certain point, both players had no resources, and what it came down to was Pavel was able to buy back that life total that Baiza's minions would deal because it's 1 damage versus 2 healing. Somewhere down the line, that Shadow Form could keep JasonZhou on an even position and have his minions chip away that way. So that's way down the road, but still something to look out for if we get to that point.
Yeah, this is one of the tech cards that's going to allow JasonZhou to have a pretty good clear here. Is the Holy Nova. Holy Nova is a card that has recently been often cut from most priest lists because it doesn't fight well against mirror matchups and it doesn't fight well against Jade Druid, which is oftentimes what you see. But JasonZhou has opted to put that in, and some of the stuff that he's foregone in his list is that end of game burst damage with Velen. He does not have Mind Block. He does not have Holy Smite. So definitely some key cards that he's missing in order to make room for more anti-aggro tools like Galaka Crawler and Holy Nova.
Yeah, and experiencing a little bit of a tech issue here. We'll try to get this sorted out as quickly as we can. But Purple's hand in that matchup was looking pretty solid, if you ask me. You know, a lot of that boils down to how much can Purple force JasonZhou to do, and can he still have follow-up to that? That's really the key factor to look out for, is just when that 1 minion sticks. That is the nightmare for JasonZhou. And that's one of the reasons that Cobalt Scalebane's just been such a popular inclusion into a lot of these decks that start out aggressive and then they move into the mid-range very quickly. It's just having something that buffs your current board, splits the bodies, and is immune to Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah, that's the big one. I mentioned playing around key cards, playing around Dragonfire Potion, playing around Shadow Reaper Anduin when appropriate. That's sort of how you win these matchups when they get pretty close. But it looks like we're back into it. Gameplay was not affected. So players just going through, and JasonZhou is kind of going all in on this Priest of the Feast. He realizes that if he loses board, like you said, sticking that 1 minion that he can't deal with, it's going to be tough for him to find a way back. And so even going as far as to use Circle of Healing last turn to keep the Priest of the Feast healthy, and using Greater Healing Potion this turn to keep the Priest of the Feast healthy.
Notice, though, that Purple is going to get control of this board, and JasonZhou's hand is very slim for dealing with this. the Prophet Velen is almost never a strong draw early on in this matchup, and his remaining cards are Silence and Spirit Lash. Purple's rolling into a Bone Mare turn, so if JasonZhou doesn't find the right card here,
That's good.
that is the best draw in JasonZhou's deck.
Some may say a huge draw.
That is a huge draw. He's going to take a lot of damage in the meantime. But if Purple moves in on this Bone Mare, JasonZhou is going to have a major clear, and I think he's trying to sell it here by using this Spirit Lash.
Yeah.
That's the second time now we've seen JasonZhou do something slightly unconventional, I think, to try and send a signal towards Purple.
Purple's got to think, though. I don't think Purple's going to be baited into Bone Mare. I think Purple's going to go 4-drop, 3-drop here. Because he couldn't even have to read that Prophet Velen is Shadow Rebrando in. It's been in the hand for a long time. It's not being used. JasonZhou is playing scrappy Hearthstone right now.
I mean, look at what just happened, though. I mean, your opponent has 2 5-attack minions on board, and they decide to expend a resource rather than just take 5 damage in a spot where,
Yeah.
that 5 damage I don't think means too much.
But keep in mind, Purple has been playing against JasonZhou thus far, and pretty much every time Jason has need to have something, he's had it. Does that make Purple want to play around it more because Jason's running hot right now? Or does it make him want to play around it less because he's saying to himself, well, he can't have it every time?
Wow.
4-drop, 3-drop it is. I like the play. But this will buff up one of these. So one of these will get in range of the Shadow Rebrando in anyway. He's just hedging his bets and making sure he has something on the board if Shadow Rebrando were to come down. And Purple rolling his eyes again. Yep, he has that one too.
Well, the follow-up here is very big. That's a huge swing for JasonZhou, of course.
That's a lot of burst damage
my.
too.
And that's 12 extra on top of that now, and the Shaku is cranking out cards at this point. So JasonZhou's going to have to use his Silence in this spot. I don't think he minds because it means he's able to clear off the Bone Mare with another card as well. Oh, and he draws Dragonfire Potion. Well, there goes the board.
Acolyte of Agony is actually not bad from a Priest pickup. There's a lot of cards that Rogue just can't make good use of when they get it from Priest, but Acolyte of Agony is actually just a card that you can play on the board.
Speaks to me.
It's not the best. It could heal him as well if it sticks.
Purple's kind of got that look on his face like, oh, really?
Yeah.
They're dying again.
And if Purple loses this match, this would be the first match that he's lost in the entire HCT summer season. He went 10-0 through the Americas playoffs and started off the summer championship with a victory. This would be his first match loss in a long time.
And Jason is deep in the tank here.
The shadows grow short.
What is he thinking about? There's no way he's thinking about taking this damage, right? I mean, that'd be nuts.
Darkness speaks to me.
Not all want
Wow.
He's going to be able to take it off the board. That's a bold move.
I'm quite stunned by this because Jason is now just accepting 5 damage from Purple. And maybe he has some sort of race shenanigans in mind where he wants to put Purple to the test right now and say how much damage you got, and then just try to kill him right back. But I don't know about this one, Teej.
Tough call. You can see Jason moused over the Silence Dragonfire Potion play right away as the turn started, but then started to think for a while and eventually came to this conclusion. I mean,
Purple's closing in on damage here. Leroy's Shadow Step represents 12 damage for 8 mana. If he uses the hero power right now, that's 2 more damage over 2 turns. And if he uses the Shadow form this turn, he gets 2 more damage immediately. Plus, he can use it again next turn. So that's 4 from Shadow form, 2 from the dagger. That's 6 damage plus 12 from the Leroy. That's 1 damage off.
so he would need an extra turn after that. But he's still going to go for it, and I like this. JasonZhou has very little resources. Purple's closing in on a win. And if one of these minions sticks, which it likely won't because the hero power plus just an attack over Velen will trade it off. But what this does do is also give Purple the option of just being able to kill Velen with the Shadow form next turn if it trades over the Bone Mare.
Shadow Vision's drawn. There's no lethal here pretty much anywhere for JasonZhou. The hero power is still at 2 mana. Raza hasn't been found.
So funny. We think back to the interview we saw with Purple earlier in the day, where he said, you know, he took a long break from Hearthstone after 2016, and you know, not really getting anywhere. And he said when he came back this year, he sort of changed as a player. He stopped trying to get fancy with plays. He stopped trying to do things crazily. He just said he just sort of, you know, plays Hearthstone, hits people in the face. That's what he does.
JasonZhou points the hero power to Purple's face in this spot. I'm really curious what JasonZhou's plan is here. I think a defensive play would have left him in such a fantastic spot a few turns ago. There's no Holy Smite in JasonZhou's deck, so Purple is now 1 damage off of killing JasonZhou. That technically is the damage, but he now doesn't have the mana to use it.
Yeah, he needs an extra turn.
Does allow him to kill the Velen, though.
And he can still hold on to the damage going into the next turn. Like, Leroy plus Shadow Step is not going to be any less damage as the game progresses. I think he's just double checking his math here. But it's 15 damage, and that utilizes all 10 of his mana.
I mean, Purple's basically got to think about Kazakus and the Greater Healing Potion.
No, Greater Healing Potion was used
he used
early
it
on in
earlier?
the game, yeah. We just saw the very end of it, but he used it to actually heal up his Priest of the
you're
Feast,
right.
to keep it alive on board. So there's very little healing left in the deck. Priest of the Feast gone, Greater Healing Potion gone. He does not have Binding Heal. And he's used Spirit Lash as well. Actually,
I mean, that's all the healing then.
that is all the healing.
Even the Holy Nova's gone at this point.
Lyra would be the only way for him to do it, but he would need Lyra plus a chain of spells, and that Lyra would have to give him something that heals. So this is definitely coming down to the wire.
Once again, is 1 damage off lethal this turn, and Jason is starting to close the door. That's the damage.
That's the damage.
Purple gonna bring this game back. 2 games to 1 now. JasonZhou decided to trade hits with Purple, and I'm curious if it cost him in this one.
Yeah, this one it's kind of tough. You know, JasonZhou wouldn't have been in a position to really contest much of the board if he hadn't been healing that Priest of the Feast and if he hadn't been putting Purple on a clock. It's very tough. But there's a lot of plays that went on in that series that we can debate all day long, and it's hard to say if it was correct or not on the fly like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you see plays that are very unconventional in these high-level matches where players are trying to make very specific reads to find an edge in matchups, or they get a sense of something from the other player, and it makes them think about what's actually in his hand. Do I need to hold here? You know, Purple's holding that Shadow Step for a while. Does Jason just read that as more heavy minions? And if it's more heavy minions, you know, does he need to get going? I imagine somewhere in Jason's mind, he's like, that could be a Vilespine Slayer. If I get him to Vilespine my Velen,
yeah,
I get to Dragonfire more. So there's a lot of little things like that happen. It's difficult to say without hearing their thoughts.
Yeah, and Purple, a player we saw at the 2015 World Championship. He was the 2015 America's champion for the entire year. But a player that has been away for a while. So for those of you who are new and don't know him that well, let's get to know him.
Well met.
My name's Purple. I'm 26 years old. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I play Hearthstone about 8 to 10 hours a day. My favorite card is Gadget-san Auctioneer. Gadget-san Auctioneer draws cards. There's a definite correlation in the current metagame towards drawing cards and win rate. There's no Canadian food. What's Canadian food? Yeah, I don't actually like poutine. That's like the one thing that's categorized as Canadian. I don't like it. I am a very emotional Hearthstone player. I feel happy, I feel frustrated, I let it all out on stream. I'm very expressive. Yeah, you feel a bit of everything in a game of Hearthstone.
Doesn't like poutine? What in the world?
TJ looks disgusted. 80% of TJ's diet is poutine.
It was for the last couple weeks as I made a visit to Montreal, but just as Purple feels a ton of emotions, frustration, sadness, happiness throughout a game of Hearthstone, that's what I felt throughout that interview.
He's not kidding either. He's a very expressive
caster.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he is an expressive individual, as we saw through his run through the playoffs, and even his post-game interviews, like, they were night and day. Some of the things that he was saying, it was he's a fun guy to talk to, but also sometimes he just says something that's so out of left field or that takes you by surprise that you're like, whoa. Purple's he's just a straight shooter. He's a rebel without a cause.
No mercy.
None. That's right. We're gonna get to game number 4 as these players sit down and get ready in just a few moments.
Gather round the fire, for there's a new tale to be told. This is the 2017 Hearthstone Summer Championship!
Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone Summer Championship. I'm TJ, joined once again by That's Admirable. And currently, we're just waiting for some technical issues to be sorted out with the players. We want to make sure that everything's A-OK for them to start their next match. So that should happen momentarily. We'll keep you guys updated as that goes on. But in the meantime, we have something fun to do, Admirable. We actually have a little bit of a game to play. Okay. And this game, all of it rests on your shoulders.
Oh,
that game is
bad
called
news.
Guess the Player.
Oh, that's easy.
What we're gonna do
Purple.
is we're gonna show you a silhouette of a player. It's just a placeholder silhouette. Don't try and read anything into it. We're also gonna show you some statistics, and you have to guess which statistics these stats belong to. Practices with his little brother. Plays on train rides to and from work. And his favorite food is miso soup. Who's that player?
Well, I have 2 older brothers, so I really understand that part of it.
So it's admirable.
Plays on train rides to and from work. So you have to be able to ride a train to work, so you have to live somewhere fairly condensed. Favorite food, miso soup. Now I love sushi. I eat a lot of miso soup. Oh, this has got to be Wuya.
You are correct.
Wuya!
It is Wuya. Congratulations, Admiral. You win round 1.
Woo!
But can you get through round 2? Second player has a finance degree, enjoys deception-based games, and is making his or her first HCT appearance this season. Who's that player?
I can barely count, so I don't know about that finance degree.
So we can rule out that's admirable.
Definitely. Enjoys deception-based games. Maybe I can count. Making first HCT. Jeez. I wish the silhouette could help me here, unfortunately. I'm going to go with Onyx.
See, it is Onyx. 2 for 2 is admirable.
He's a smart guy. We talked to him a lot in the interview. I don't recall the finance degree discussion, but he did mention that he loves to lie.
He did, and we were questioning whether or not anything he said in the interview was correct after that point. All right, next player. Favorite card, Shadow Reaper Anduin. Every player. Qualified for a season championship before and will teach his children to play Hearthstone. Ooh. Who's that player?
Well, Golden Priest was the last class I needed for like a year and a half, so I'm lost there.
So, once again, we can rule out that's admirable.
9th place is the closest I've come. I don't know what it's like to make it to a championship before, and I'm barely responsible enough to have a bank account, let alone children. I'm going to go with Nalguidan.
It's Trunks!
I forgot about that part. He talks about his kids. Or his kid, rather.
Unlucky.
Yeah.
That's just straight up RNG right there, my friend. Let's move on to the last one. Guess the player. Favorite part about Hearthstone is the randomness. Wants to buy a house with prize winnings and quote-unquote always lucky because of quote-unquote positive karma balance.
Now, I remember this discussion very handedly. He's a bright young mind. He's fresh to competitive gaming. He's a renewable energy student. That is Empanizado.
Ding, ding, ding. Admirable. You have won once again, but 3 for 4. Unfortunately, we were looking for 4 out of 4 in order to win. So, in fact, you lose.
As usual.
Can we buzz him out again? That was... One more time for the road. There we go. Unlucky. Sorry, Admirable.
One more time?
No. All right. Well, these players look like they're getting set up and ready. We'll see if the issues have been resolved. But definitely, you know, this can sort of play into the mind of some players when they're on stage like this and just sitting, waiting, watching me and Admirable play games.
Yeah, something about it when you're sitting, waiting for a game to happen. You're already nervous enough. It's just, you add that little extra thing in there. You're like, I want to play. I'm concentrated, I'm focused, I've done all my practice. Whether you're ahead or behind, I feel this adds to the amount of pressure that's currently there. Yeah,
and you can also tell that Purple, the longer this game goes on, the crazier his hair gets.
He plays with his hair a lot when he's playing the game. That is something I have noticed dating back to his 2015 Americas victory. There you go.
Yeah, and you can see he's going up against the Priest, and a Doppelgangster keep is not something that you see often, but a lot of times players, when they're playing Shaman versus Priest, will keep mostly every card that isn't Doppelgangster Evolve because of how important that combination of cards is for the matchup. He does keep Bloodsoul Corsair too, because that's a one-drop, and it also pulls patches out of his deck early, which makes sure that the rest of his draws on average are better. It does pick up Evolve, so off to a pretty good start, and it's Karen to follow it up.
It also just threatens damage. You know, we saw JasonZhou in game number 1 completely run over Purple with a turn 5 Bloodlust. that is something JasonZhou has to think about. Mana Tide is extra resources, and that's what Purple's deck is built around. He's added a copy of Cairn, he's added a copy of Sea Giant, and he's actually cut a Primal Fin Totem from the deck. So he is much more tuned to fight on board than he is to simply outright hope he can burst JasonZhou out of the game.
Yeah.
This is a devastating blow that he's suffering right here. But he's got Doppelgangster Evolve and he's got Cairn. This is a lot of pressure that JasonZhou is going to face in the next couple turns.
Yeah, and this is one of the weaknesses to that strategy is if the Priest is able to find a board clear early on, you got to wait kind of a while sometimes for Doppelgangster Evolve to come online, which gives the Priest the opportunity to find additional resources to deal with that type of board. Right now, JasonZhou could go opt for Kazakus to try and find a 5-mana potion that can deal with wide board states. And it looks like that is what he's going to go for. And 5 mana, a lot of times when you play it on 4 is good. I know there's a lot of debate among the casters and players alike that like to opt for the 1 mana potion when it's relevant, but curbing 4 into 5 is usually pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of times Kazakus feels to me a lot like Primordial Glyph into Firelands Portal, where you just have a massive effect lined up before it feels like you should have a massive effect lined up.
Yep.
So JasonZhou here doesn't find AoE with his potion, but he's still got a lot of gas in the tank. Double evolve for Purple though.
Yeah, double evolve with the Doppelgangster to follow it up. He's got Bloodlust. I mean, these are the tools that he needs to beat this deck. He's got an ability to create a wide board state that's hard to remove, and then he's got an ability to Bloodlust to turn that into more damage.
Yeah, and notice JasonZhou is playing the Radiant Elemental this turn, and this is really for 2 reasons. Number 1, he has Resurrect on his Kazakus potion. He needs to fight for board. Number 2, he intends to play this Doomsayer this turn and try to keep Purple off of a turn just like that. Whether or not Purple handles this with a card in his hand, it means it's kept him off Doppelgangster Evolve for a turn. That is JasonZhou's major goal.
Yeah, and Purple realizes that he can't afford to take the tempo loss. He can't afford to have a turn where he completely skips, or that he only devolves and barely clears off anything. So he's going to play Cairn just to get the Bane Bloodhoof on the board to try and contest. But JasonZhou's got what he needs to deal with this.
And that's not a res on the Doomsayer.
All right.
That means Purple's unlocked for the Doppelgangster here.
Still needs a good outcome.
Is that strong enough?
Ooh.
Not for
the
Purple.
second evolve.
Oh my gosh, Purple gets a major payoff.
Shadow Reaper Anduin comes in the hand, but with Bloodlust and a Wind Fury minion on board.
And JasonZhou can't land a minion right now. Anything he plays is attacked by Swamp King Dread.
Yeah, he can't Blood Mage Thalnos, Holy Nova Spirit Lash that otherwise would be able to get through mostly everything, but he can't do that because Blood Mage will be killed by Swamp King Dread as soon as it hits the board.
It attacks any minion that enters play. If it's frozen, it won't be able to attack. That's about the only circumstance that you stop that card from doing that.
Yeah. And if Purple sticks the Stormwatcher on board, all of a sudden with Bloodlust, that's 16 points of damage just from that card alone, as long as a Stormwind Champion wins. But we have to look at what can JasonZhou do to minimize the amount of damage that's on the board. He can clear off Stormwind Champion.
Spirit Lash Holy Nova does buy him a lot of life. But does he want to draw first? Maybe try to find Shadow Word Death in this spot. JasonZhou just needs one more turn.
I don't think he thought that through. I don't think he realized that Blood Mage was going to die. He needed to go quicker if that was going to be his plan. You saw him reach for that Holy Nova. He thought that the spell power was going to be able to get him through, but it's not, and he has to pivot his game plan because of it. And
Spirit
it kills
Lash.
the Priest of the Feast too.
JasonZhou doesn't sink his minions into the Swamp King Dread.
And that's game.
Purple is going to tie the set up in spectacular fashion, and we are going to Game 5.
It's been the trend so far today. These matches are very close. We've only seen one 3-0 all day, and that happened in the previous match that we just saw. But this one is going the distance, and you know, with these two players and their careers thus far, I don't think it could be anything but a game number 5.
Wow. And Purple, you see him get a little fired up towards the end there. That was the kind of outcome he needed to take that game away. And honestly, the Cairn was a big catalyst to that.
Yeah.
It forced JasonZhou to play to the board heavier. That potion was enormous for him, but that set Purple up for the Doppelgangster double evolve turn. that he landed, and you saw him keep that Doppelgangster in the opening hand. It's very rare that you see players keep 5-mana cards.
Yeah, and I think Purple was the one who was talking to us about it the most, was how important that plus the Evolve is against Priest. And now the final matchup comes down to a Priest mirror match.
Did you see JasonZhou? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, well played, Purple. Well played.
Swamp King Dread's a pretty good card.
Yeah.
Stormwatcher, pretty good card. But yeah, Purple I think is much better situated in the Priest mirror than JasonZhou is.
I would definitely say that Purple has an advantage, and for a number of reasons. So JasonZhou's deck is more geared towards aggressive lineups. He's got a copy of Galaka Crawler, a copy of Greater Healing Potion, of Holy Nova, of Lyra, and in those spots, instead, Purple has a Wild Pyromancer, a Binding Heal, a Smite,
Mind Blast,
an Auctioneer. JasonZhou is missing a lot of that burst damage, and that's a lot of what this matchup comes down to.
Now there's still a lot of volatility with the matchup, even though I think Purple has more consistent card draw, especially with Gadgets and Auctioneer. If JasonZhou is able to find Raza and Shadow Reaper Anduin before a long time before Purple is, he can piece together enough damage to get there. But Purple,
Stands look very similar.
they really do.
Now there is one major difference, and that's the Zok.
Kazamikis.
Oftentimes in this matchup, you're not looking for the same potions you are in other matchups. You don't want the AoE, you don't really want the 5 damage, you want to find the card draw.
Fun card draw. Draw 2 cards, gain 7 armor. It's pretty good.
This should tell you everything you need to know. Purple is looking for draw 2 cards here.
Now this one's tough. And he doesn't find draw 2.
So that's looking like Purple probably took Polymorph for the first options.
Yeah.
Offsetting even something as insignificant as Alchemy Soul Priest or Priest of the Feast in this spot can make a big difference.
Yeah, Polymorph and summon 2 friendly minions that died this game. A pretty underwhelming potion for the matchup, I have to say. Curious Glimmerroot can find those key pieces. He's looking for Raza, he's looking for Shadow Reaper Anduin. Those are the 2 key cards, but
I'll take a Priest of the Feast.
have to settle for Priest of the Feast.
So something that's really important to note here is JasonZhou with Northshire Cleric. That's one of the more threatening cards in the matchup, I'd say. But you have to be careful when you play this card, or Acolyte of Pain for that matter. A lot of the same situations apply, where Potion of Madness can really swing the board to your opponent's favor. JasonZhou is very aware that Purple has Wild Pyromancer and that he has Circle of Healing in his deck. So JasonZhou has to be careful when he times those cards to not give too much of a potential edge over to Purple.
Yeah.
Blessed be this funnel cake.
He's developing a board though, and that can be pretty important. You know, we talked about how JasonZhou's Priest deck lacks burst damage later in the game. He can make up for that by going with, you know, trying to develop minions and stick them on the board and get that damage in early on. That is a possibility.
Well, I think this is the turn we're probably going to see Potion of Madness from JasonZhou, and I'm curious if he ever wants to couple the Acolyte with it in this spot. He would love to take that draw from Purple and have it all for himself.
Yeah.
It is quite dangerous to play delayed card draw effects in this matchup prior to Potion of Madness being played.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. Yeah, you know, a lot of times you can play around certain case scenarios, but not others. In this case, I don't fault Purple for playing it because he doesn't have anything on the board that he can trade it into. JasonZhou would have to have Potion of Madness plus a way to kill it off, and Purple's willing to take the risk of having that card draw effectively stolen with that situation. And now I think JasonZhou is trying to think if Acolyte of Pain is worth it here to get the extra card draw with the Spirit Lash.
You want to tackle that one first?
Yep. 1 damage. And this matchup often does not matter because you have plenty of time to heal back up, but
You never know.
the fundamentals of Hearthstone.
He's going to trade the Northshire Cleric away as well.
And silence.
It's technically one of the most expensive card draws in his deck.
Finds Raza.
It's a big one. So now Purple is finding a bit of heat here.
Blessed be this
He's going to take that Northshire right back. He's going to say, hey, Doomsayer, I know you're shutting up for a bit, but draw me a card. And then trade that Northshire in.
Yeah, deny
Now-
card draw from the opponent as well.
Remember, the Kazakus potion was Resurrect Minions. Doomsayer's not the pool, but now Northshire Cleric is.
Blood Mage Thanos is not, because it was stolen.
My invention.
Killed on JasonZhou's side of the board. Again, Curious Glimroot can pick up an extra tool. Second Raza, perhaps.
Oh, this is an interesting turn for Jason. Shadow Reaper Anduin isn't quite the most devastating card just yet. And so I think Jason is totally fine with seeing that happen.
And I was given a stat. So far, this is the 10th match, I believe, that we've played so far on day number 1 here. And the 7th that has gone to game 5.
Northshire gets rezzed. And that's Dragonfire Potion waiting in JasonZhou's hand. And that's one of those tech cards that is fairly weak in this matchup. Galaka Crawler.
It's a 2-3.
It's very rare that you see Pirate Priest.
One day.
I mean, my blast deals 5 damage.
We got a good 6 months left of that.
I like throwing the
Speak to me.
Acolyte into the fray here. Get that card draw.
Yep. Picks up Kazakus of his own. So far, JasonZhou has had 2 of the pieces that are key to this matchup. And Purple has only had the Kazakus, which is the weakest of the 3.
Whoa.
That's pretty rough. Purple, you can see there on your screen, so far a 1-4 record with Priest. And
Now,
he's
granted,
won
2
his
of those come in this matchup.
Yeah, and but 1 and 2 in his previous matchup is pretty rough. That means his other decks are performing very well, but this one is not.
And now Jason's really got some thinking ahead of him.
Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Well, that's going to change a lot of that thinking there.
Yeah.
Kazakus, if JasonZhou had drawn a brick this turn, I'm curious if he ever contemplates a 10-cost potion from this Kazakus. Just try to get as much draw as possible.
Going through the motions, making sure he heals his face before he resets his hero
Very
power.
critical when you're at 30.
Incredibly important, that's right. But just getting it online as early as he can. It's even more important for Jason to do this because of the fact that he lacks the burst. He needs to start piecing into the damage over turns. And Purple can use Alkanite Soul Priest to draw a card with Acolyte of Pain if he so chooses.
It's a little bit tough with the Priest of the Feast in play. That tends to be an anti-synergy that's in the deck.
Yeah, he could also draw a second card with Circle of Healing. I mean, to be honest, he really does need to find those key cards. He does need to find, whether it's Gadgetzan Auctioneer to get closer to those cards, whether it's Raza, Shadow Reaper Anduin. Not hitting the card draw on that Kazakus potion is really hurting him at this point.
Embrace the void.
Draw it. Bop it.
And if you're JasonZhou and you see that,
Twist it.
you are feeling good. Oh my gosh, that is a huge draw, TJ.
Excuse me, what? Is it huge?
It's very huge. It's incredibly large.
Prophet Velen.
This speaks to me.
Not much to couple with it. Almost nothing to couple with it now.
Yeah, so JasonZhou is going to look for a 5-cost potion here on this Kazakus. I believe anyway. I mean, he could go for the 1 here.
Demons all day.
And he took that so fast, I don't believe we saw a second option.
Demons all day.
More importantly, 4 damage to all minions. Purple has lost his pressure. He doesn't have Raza or Shadow Reaper Anduin online, and JasonZhou is pulling very far ahead in resources.
Yep.
Purple does not look happy.
No. When you're playing the mirror matchup and Raza and Shadow Reaper Anduin are in your bottom,
Well,
Shadow Reaper Anduin is in your bottom 11 cards, it's pretty rough, but that is a saving grace because now it's just 1 piece away. And he does pack a little bit more burst, but the question is, can he get through minion pressure that JasonZhou's going to be able to put on?
Well, the Demon provided a Abyssal Enforcer. It's just a very large body at this point that Purple doesn't have a way to contest properly right now.
A large purple man.
Despite that, JasonZhou, he can simply go for pressure, he can go for value, he can really take any of these lines, and he finds another Shadow Reaper Anduin off the Curious Glimmer route.
It's like 8 mana, deal 2 damage, gain 5 health.
And blow up 5.
And blow up 5 attack minions.
Yeah.
That could be big, but, you know, Raz the Unchained is really the only minion that's 5 attack or more that he's got left in his deck, unless he finds something crazy.
And JasonZhou's beating down the door. He says, let's go. Pressure is where his focus is right now.
Yep.
Shadow Word Horror, no help.
Circle of Healing quite dead now that Auchenai Soul Priest is gone.
It'd have to be some crazy Northshire shenanigans.
Yeah, it's basically just going to be either 2 or 4 damage later on in the game once Felon's drawn and once Shadow Reaper Anduin is drawn, if the game goes that far.
He's trying to turn this into as much as he possibly can to stay alive. His mind, if he finds Anduin, he's got hope in this game.
Yeah, if his next 2 draws are Anduin Velen, that's definitely the case because he's got Radiant Elemental, Mind Blast, Binding Heal, Circle of Healing, Shadow Word Pain.
It's a lot of stuff.
He's got a lot of those spells. Not all of them can be played even with the Radiant Elemental, but a good some of them can be. Shadow Word Hoarder removed just a Galactic Crawler.
Well, he's trying to just chip away the board damage right now. You know, he had the option to push, but he doesn't have the liberty to push. So trying to just clear out as much of the board as he can here, I think is the right call. It's just very difficult for him to actually accomplish that.
Abyssal Enforcer looks quite good. Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Oh my.
Yeah. Purple currently does not have a way to even deal with this. Purple's like, hey, not bad.
Not Anduin. And he has no way to answer this Abyssal Enforcer.
6 plus 2 plus 8.
This one turn was the most critical turn here, I think. If Purple had drawn Anduin.
Wait. Can he? Yeah, I think this might be game. Yeah, he can. But he could have Prophet Velen. Hero powered him down to 8. Radiant Elemental. Hero powered him down to 4. And then Shadow Word Pained his own Radiant Elemental to deal the final points of damage. I believe that was lethal damage.
I think it was too. 6 from Velen, 4 from Radiant, 4 from Shadow Word Pain.
Exactly 10 mana.
But it's no help to Purple. He's out of ways to handle things. And he fought hard, but JasonZhou takes the set over Purple 3 games to 2.
A very close series and kind of similar to you know, Purple's earlier game, just this time he wasn't able to come on top in a big win for Jason. He's moving on to the quarterfinals, now 1 match away from a 2nd World Championship appearance for him and also the first Chinese player to make it to the World Championship. That is a big deal and he's sitting up there as the group winner.
Whew, what a performance too for JasonZhou. We saw the players smiling and laughing as they walked off stage. Purple is not out of it just yet. He will face the winner of Amex versus Wuya in that bottom portion of the bracket, but he is now on a decider match. If he doesn't win, then he's out.
Yeah, and Raven is standing by on stage with JasonZhou for some words about his victory.
Thanks a lot, TJ. I'm with JasonZhou. First off, congratulations on that match. You were 2-0 up and must be feeling very confident. What was it like when Purple started to fight back there?
It's really hard to fight with Purple because I have lost to him like twice in the past. I never win him. I know he's a great player, but for this match, I think I have a bit advantage in my lab. So yeah, maybe RNG is standing me today, but I still think Purple will make it in the group stage.
Yeah, Purple's not knocked out yet, but I have to ask, in that Shaman game, when the Evolve came down and then the second one with Swamp King Dread, just take me through what was going through your mind and what happened there.
I don't know what to do. Like, I was 2-0 head, but after that match, I was messed up. I don't know how to play. But yeah, last match, I think maybe I missed Lethal. I don't remember, maybe. But it's just because of the Shaman match, I really don't know what to play.
Well, Evolve has got a lot to answer for in this series, at least. But moving on slightly as well, you know, the Chinese players seem to be doing a lot better than we've seen them do in the past. Do you think this is the tournament where we see multiple Chinese players qualify for Worlds?
I can't say, but this time we did better because Omega Zero is also in the winner bracket, right? And I think our lineup is not bad this time compared to last time. My lineup is really bad, but this time I think we could do better.
Okay, well, it seems to be working so far, so congratulations again on the victory. You've won the group, must be feeling fantastic. But let's check back in with TJ, some updates on that game.
Swamp King Dread made JasonZhou forget how to play Hearthstone. That's how much of an impact that Doppelgangster evolved. But taking a look at the records by region, it's pretty much flipped from what we've seen in the past, with China and Asia Pacific sitting high at 60% win rates, in Americas and Europe struggling just a little bit more with 40%. But Admiral, we have a lot more Hearthstone to play.
That's right. There's still plenty more to go. This is only day one of the event, but we're going to be seeing players get knocked out as these first couple days go along. So if this trend continues, we'll be seeing the Asia Pacific and Chinese dominance, which is very much needed for them at this point. There's only one representative from Asia Pacific going through and no representatives thus far from China.
Yeah, and coming up next, we have a battle of those two regions. Surrender from Korea going up against Omega Zero from China. Going to be a big match. The winner moves on to the quarterfinals, so make sure you stay tuned for that one. It's been a great day so far. We still have some Hearthstone left to play as these guys make their way to the stage. But man, it's been a good one. You can see some of the reactions of the players, Purple and JasonZhou. A brutal showdown that went all the way to game number 5. The 7th game number 5 of the day, where JasonZhou was able to take it and move on to the quarterfinals. We're gonna have more HCT summer action coming up right after this.